to New Work Conversations, where we discuss how to create fulfilling workplaces, and in this particular instance, thriving communities. I'm Manuel from New Work by Design, and my guest today is Rich Bartlett. My conversation with Rich centers around community and what creates it. I've known Rich since 2012, when a former flatmate of mine and co-founder of Rich introduced us, knowing that we were both into self-organization. I appreciate about Rich how authentic and vulnerable he shows up to any interaction. It brings so much depth to any conversation while being fun and lighthearted at the same time. He's just an all-around pleasant person to spend time with. I'm so grateful that I'm able to call him a friend, and now that he lives in Europe, we get actually spend some time together every once in a while. What I found most interesting in our conversation is his take on how to create a sense of community and how to spot a community when it's truly alive. So, without any further ado, here's my conversation with Rich.
My friend from acting school, a vocal exercise where you go, you use the low and the high end. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then the voice that comes out naturally is like your sweet voice.
Okay, so this is what I should be doing now? I'm so glad I'm recording this already. I've never done this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So weird. I had to think about it.
It's like doing burpees.
Yeah, I know how to count, but changing the tone in between is actually quite a challenge mentally.
You did very well.
Ah, thank you.
This is my podcast voice.
Exactly. Batman's in the room.
Batman's in the room.
Yes. All right. So, how do I start? Not with the first question. I guess we start with a hello. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining me today for a conversation about community. We'll try to dig deep, and I know you have a lot of knowledge in it, and admire your current project, but we'll get into that later. But first of all, thanks for joining me and have this conversation with me and taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. This is like one of my favorite topics to talk about, and I really love having conversations with you, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So how about we start out with defining what we're talking about? So the first question would be, what is community?
Yeah, it's one of these words that has such a loose and slippery definition. Sometimes it's hard to know what we're talking about. And I think people have extended the definition beyond the point of it being useful. So like you hear people talk about the Bitcoin community, or it's just sort of like people that have some shared interest, and that doesn't really grab me. So I go off the deep end in the other direction, and I say community is the people that bring you soup when you're sick.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's slightly too extreme, but it sort of points in the direction of what I'm interested in, which is care, solidarity, intimacy, like the relationships that really make a difference to your life and affect your sense of identity and sense of purpose in the world, your deeper sense of belonging. That's the kind of community that I'm focused on.
That makes sense. So I want to go still thinking about that, as you said, as an example, Bitcoin community. So we now use this word for any group of people who do something similar, might not even know each other, right? Is that it?
Yeah, it's like an addressable market or some class that has something in common with each other.
Yeah. And I guess that came up because people who start these quote unquote communities, they would like them to be more, but they're probably not, and also not putting in the effort to make that happen. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And it sort of, I think it speaks to the moment we're in, in this contemporary point in history where, people would prefer to call it a community manager than like a marketing person. There's a kind of linguistic games that we're playing to try and appeal to people's deep needs.
Mm. Yeah, Okay. So then let's, is that a good enough definition for us to work with? Okay. Then I would like to get next to why community matters to you.
I think community matters to me because we're mammals, and mammals are just, we're fundamentally relational creatures. So what I'm capable of is just like, it's predefined by the people that I'm in relationship with. That's how I see it. Like that the people you spend the most time with have such an influence on your values, your beliefs, uh, your capacities, your skills, your outlook, your well-being, your emotional state, your nervous system state. All of these things we're constantly cueing off each other because we're a herd species. And so number one, I think people need, I certainly need to have good, like I just need to have people who've got my back and sort of reflect my values back at me and um, want to help me out and to the same degree that I want to help them out. And there's just a sort of, I need people, people need people. Um, just anyone, I think anyone needs people. And it seems like the, the level of social connection, social fabric seems to be in decline. It's hard to measure, but it does seem that way. And and then not just for like the baseline. Okay, the baseline's important, but then if you ever want to do something ambitious, if you want to have some kind of positive impact on the world, if you want to make something of your life, that leaves a mark, then it's even more important to have a crew, have partners, have collaborators, have like people on your team to get there.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's the general answer why we all need community.
Mm.
Why is community so important to Rich?
Oh, right. um, when I was a kid, I I was raised in like quite an amazing community, very, very tight knit. It sort of felt like I had 50 aunties and uncles and this enormous extended family of not my actual cousins, but the people in my community that it felt like I could, I always say it like, if something terrible would happen to my parents, there were all these other families that would have taken me in and would have like done a good enough job of raising me because I was raised in this religious community that um, had a kind of common common set of values, shared investment. This is the kind of Christian community where every family was contributing 10% of their income uh, to some common infrastructure so that we could have a church building and a school, and the minister's family was taken care of, and there's a sort of like informal um, social welfare safety net. So if some family's unemployed for a while, they can be taken care of. That level of investment in taking care of each other and creating really excellent conditions for raising kids, and that that was the background that I grew up in. I remember once, I was on a farm. We grew up on a farm, and there was a storm coming through, and it was threatening to destroy our greenhouses. And I remember a day where like half the church showed up with ropes to like weather the storm and like hold the roof on the greenhouse as the storm came through. Like
Mm.
that kind of practical solidarity. Um, that's the snapshot that I have in my head of what a good community is like. But I'm no longer part of that specific community. I'm no longer part of that religion because the way that my belonging was dependent on conforming to their beliefs
Mm.
in a way that I just couldn't, I still can't really integrate that. I don't know how to be myself and conform to a set of beliefs that is static and pre-existing. Um, and so that I ruptured with that in my early 20s. And I think this is like one of the main motivators or like driving forces in my whole biography and my whole life story is like, I want that degree of solidarity. I want that degree of belonging and mutual aid. And the hypothesis or the experiment is that can we have that degree of mutual care without having conformity of belief?
Mm. And your assumption is yes?
No. My assumption is I hope so.
Okay.
And from the experiments I've done so far, I suspect it requires a level of cognitive complexity and emotional maturity for people to be able to really find common cause despite having very differing beliefs.
Mm.
And I don't know how widespread that level of maturity is.
Yeah. Okay. Couple questions. Obviously, so you can try now to attract people who are far enough with this emotional maturity uh, to kind of create such a community. And I guess that is what you're doing right now. But the follow-up question is, can that then be a role model for the rest of us? Will we, as a society, ever get there to be emotionally mature enough to all have this?
Yeah. So we're suddenly talking about adult development, which
Yeah.
is not my specialty, but it does seem to be essential to this topic. Um, I do take some inspiration from, the nation building project in Europe, for example, or if you look at, like the religion that I grew up in, I think it is possible to design social structures like nations or like religions that work for people at different stages of development. So you might have some fraction of a church congregation that have a very innocent or like a naive belief in the church is good, the Bible comes from God, what it says there is very straightforwardly true, and I can just relax knowing that there's a divine Father that's taking care of things. And then you have some other fraction of the congregation who sees it more metaphorically and understands that it's not so straightforward, and maybe the earth was not created in 5 days, but there's been this long history of evolution, and you know that they have a more complex understanding, but they both actually can coexist in the same place, and they can have mutual respect for each other and not antagonize each other. um, I think that's what's happening in religions. I think that's what's happening with nationalism as well, that like um, nationalism was intentionally invented to give people a sort of simplistic idea of, hey, we're all an extended family and the president is your dad. And some people know that that's a fabrication, and other people don't. They're just participating in it. But it does create solidarity across different levels of cognitive complexity and development.
Yeah. Uh, I read a good piece once about uh, creating a shared enemy, and that bonds you,
Mm.
and yeah, so that's what I just thought of the nationality. It's not even you don't even have to create something that we are similar at. You just need to create something that's other than us, and that we fear enough to so we stick together.
Mm.
But anyway, we we're in danger of getting into very theoretical
Yeah.
territory, and I'm trying to do my job in keeping us more grounded in practicalities. So I want to switch to then how do you develop community? So assuming you you have this group and they already have something in common and they want to come together, or they already do come together, how do you create this sense of community?
Mm. It's a very interesting question, and I'm going to be theoretical a little bit longer.
But cool with me.
Yeah. My assumption, like one of the lenses that I use for understanding the world is, I think in terms of fractals. So like these patterns that repeat at different scales. And my assumption is that the formation of collective identity, like if you think about how a family feels like a unit, or a town, or a nation, or a friend group, um, that these different scales have something in common with each other. And actually, I think you can keep looking even down into the micro scale of like how do the different cells in my body identify as a person. Like, why is it that the different cells in my body are not attacking each other? How do they form collective identity? Um, and it's been really fruitful for me to examine these sort of micro to macro scales and say what is going on at every level that creates coherence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the insights I guess I've gained from that view is that consistent repetition orchestrates attention and builds shared identity.
Can you repeat that?
Consistent repetition orchestrates attention and builds shared identity.
Mm-hmm.
So orchestrating attention means I'm creating an anticipation. This morning I was having breakfast outside and I heard two green woodpeckers on either side of the valley calling to each other. And they are making a signal and waiting for the response. And then they get the signal and they repeat it back. And when both of them are anticipating the same thing, they start to fuse their cognition. If you think about an orchestra, there's a conductor at the front and everyone's waiting. When my hand goes to the left, everyone's waiting for my hand to come back right. And we synchronize our clock, we're like, we synchronize our heart rates. So for the more practical question of like, how do you form a stronger sense of community? Consistent repetition, rituals. So like, if you play football now and then, it might not have that much impact on your identity. But if you play football every Monday night, then you're a footballer. There's something about the repeated, this is part of who I am, that really starts to shape identity and then shapes your sense of belonging, your priorities, your sense of self extends into the other people that are synchronizing with you.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense. So looking at the use case that brought us here, the ale community, let's see if it is a community or not. But what I just thought about is there's this one yearly event, and it's a 3-day open space. And in between, there's some exchange, but not much. Some people, from time to time post a photo of, hey, I just met this person in this random city. So there is this like, oh, we get to see each other from time to time outside of this, but mostly it's this one 3-day event once a year. And I'm wondering, from what you just said, repetition and ritual, is that frequent enough to even create community? Or does there have to be something else that's more frequent?
Yeah, this is the good thing about rhythm, right? Like if you think about how a drummer is working, their right foot might be kicking very slowly on the bass drum while their right hand is tipping on the hi-hat 16 times faster. But still those things synchronize. You can have slow rhythms and fast rhythms and they can still mesh together like a gearbox. So like if this annual event plays a significant role and people keep coming back to it and they have this like deep intrinsic motivation to participate and to shape it and to make it reflect their values, it's obviously playing a really important role for some people. And I can imagine that if you have appetite for more than that, and if you get around to 11 months and you're starting to sort of lose touch with the sense of why this is awesome, if you could find ways to add faster, like a different tempo, it might have to operate at a smaller scale. This is another repeating pattern that seems to be like, if you've got everyone, then they're going to move slowly, but if you can have a subgroup, it can move a lot more quickly. So for example, maybe there's ale for AI, or ale for child rearing, or ale for Hamburg, or whatever is the subgrouping that you want to use that could meet monthly or something like that, or have some kind of digital connection point. Again, it seems to be like a pattern of a strong group is that it has strong subgroups. Like if you want to analyze the strength of an enterprise, you look at the strength of the teams.
Yeah. So would you say this is what the pods do at Inspiral?
Yeah. This has been our experience with Inspiral, where we're looking at how do we create meaningful collaborations and a deep sense of belonging and a sense that people have my back. The large group event, like when you get 100 people together or 500 people together, you can have this temporary efflorescence, this sort of bubbling of excitement of like, wow, all these stimulating, inspiring people. I'm so glad to be part of this big thing. But that sense of being part of something doesn't actually last. Like it doesn't, when it's 3 months later and you've just injured your back and you're kind of incapacitated for a few days, the large group festival is not going to show up and cook for you. You know, it's like the one person who actually is in regular contact with you and realizes that, wow, Manuel's in a really tough spot right now. I'm going to go help him out. And recognizing this pattern that people need, people are taken care of by small groups, not by large groups. At Inspiral, we've really not just started, for years now, we've been dialing up the visibility on the importance of the small group and saying it's good to get together in the big group and have some inspiration, but really if you want to have lasting impact, like if you want your material conditions of your life to improve as a result of your participation in this large group, you really need to be finding your small group. You need to find your crew, and preferably that crew is actually going to meet with consistent repetition. That you say we're going to have a weekly call or a monthly gathering or something that really means you get into each other's priorities.
I'm just laughing because I don't know, I've been part of Inspiral for 3 years, something like that, maybe 4. And I just only of this last gathering joined a pod for the first time. So it's like, if only I knew this was so important. I should have done this earlier.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. So how does community develop? We just covered. So I had an add-on question. What are the invisible threads that weave people together? Kind of goes in the same direction, but maybe that sparks something else. So what are the things that connect us really?
I think about connection a lot in terms of hospitality. That hospitality is a sacred art form. It's practiced a million different ways in different parts of the world. And it's a really crucial part of our inheritance as like civilized people, is that we learn how to encounter the stranger and invite them safely into our home or into our town and find out what's the protocol where we can exchange peacefully in a way that's good for everyone. And I guess my life's work in some way is like, how can I be the best? How can I cultivate this hospitality in a way that's not just, oh, you had a nice weekend at my house, but really it's like part of the project of building civilization, part of extending the field of coordination and trust and peace to include many more people. So that we're not just like, if you think a few hundred years ago in Europe, every neighboring valley was at war with every other neighboring valley. You know, I prefer this version of Europe where there's like a general sort of baseline of peace and prosperity. Like this seems pretty good. And so then when you start thinking about what's involved in hospitality, there's like 1,000 little invisible threads. The simple thing of 2 strangers sit down at my dining room table. They don't know each other. I know them both. I can choose or steer the conversation in a way that brings out the strengths of each of those people and seeks the Venn diagram overlap where they're likely to find common interests, common values, a joke that they enjoy, something. There are all these millions of little gestures like that we can do to like predispose people to form bonds instead of polarize and get defensive against each other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if you had a group of, let's stay at this scale for a moment. If you had a group of 10 people, but we always meet at your place, I would imagine that's less effective if we rotated the hosting and we just visit each other and every time someone else hosts. Does that ring true to you?
I mean, it depends on what you want to achieve. If you wanted to, if I was holding some kind of special knowledge and you all wanted to learn from me, then maybe coming to my place every week is the way to do that. But if what you want to do is build a field of belonging and shared leadership and shared ownership, then absolutely taking turns. Um, I noticing like what kind of responsibility is involved in hosting, and is it something that everyone can do?
Mm.
Ideally, yes, I would say. Um, and you get the different people's different competences or different preferences will show up when it's their turn to host, and you learn from each other. Like, oh wow, you did this really awesome thing with the, I don't know, the way the lighting works or the way that you set up that conversation or how you set up your furniture, and that stuff gets transmitted around as we take turns hosting.
Yeah. Well, I get your point that, not everyone might have the same skills in hosting, but I would imagine if we always met at your place, we'd become really independent on you, and it would become
Yeah.
more a followership rather than a community. Because once you say, I'm going on a world tour for a year, I would imagine this group just falls apart because we just always met at your place, and if that doesn't happen, then we don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No one has a chance to build the skills or build this sense of identity that like, oh, this is something that I do. The way this group works is we take turns. Like if you haven't built that in, if all of the priming and the role modeling has been there's one special person who plays a special role,
Mm.
when that person when their priority shift or their capacity shifts, then the group falls apart.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that might actually point to something why the ale community feels different than
Mm.
any other conference group or conference regular attendees that I've met or been part of, is because that shared hosting, right? It travels around in Europe, and I think that might be part of the answer. Why is this community different than other conferences?
And I imagine by this hospitality idea of wearing out your welcome, like you can exhaust the host, and so like when the hosts are temporary and they're just doing it occasionally, it's more likely you're going to show up with your full capacity and
Yeah,
enthusiasm and readiness and like I'm going to give this my best, and then I'm going to take a couple of years off and just enjoy the fruits of someone else's work.
yeah, absolutely. It is a bit like feels a bit like the Olympics, like because you pitch to host it, and then there is a vote, and
Yeah.
it's not even like, oh, now I do this and I have a couple of years off. It's like, no, it's once in a lifetime. I'll host this once and then I'm
Wow.
done. So I
Wow.
wanna give it my best because it's the only chance I've got.
Mhm. And I guess like the Olympics, hopefully you have a speech at the end where they say, "This is the best Olympics ever."
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I do kind of expect to be carried out on their shoulders, but
Yeah, good. Good.
let's, let's see what happens. Okay, so what else? Oh yeah, I like this question. So what does it feel like when community is truly alive? Um, and then to make it more concrete, can you describe a moment like that?
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I think uh, there's different feelings, right? When the community is really alive. One of them is it's like a super organism. It's like super capacity that whatever is the issue, someone is at hand. Whatever is the need, someone is there with the skill or the resources or the whatever you need is going to get met immediately. That's one flavor that comes to mind. One feeling of like, oh gosh, we have everything we need, and it's kind of effortlessly been mobilizing spontaneously. Like this, it doesn't even seem like we need any coordinating infrastructure. It's just the stuff is showing up. That's one feeling, and then the other feeling that comes to mind is more calm, more sedate than that, which is about being accepted in a transformative way, which is actually kind of now that I say that, kind of paradoxical, but being accepted in a way that changes you. um,
Hmm.
I think you've had this experience at Inspiral. I've had it. I've seen loads of people have it, where we have this ritual of getting together and spending time, spending a few days on a retreat. And most of those retreats, there'll be some evening that's set apart, and mm, we do our own little homegrown ritual there where people share something from their heart. And so many times that I've been in that space, either listening or taking my turn to share and be heard, I will share something that's been weighing on my mind, or it's been causing me stress, or it's just like really been contorting my emotions for a long time. And it's often the kind of thing that I've never really said to anyone, or I might have said to my wife or my best friend, but it's something I've never really addressed out in the open before. And like a concrete example, actually, I remember some years ago at that point where it felt extremely risky to do so, I was having doubts about the way that contemporary feminism was playing out. And I don't mean doubts like I'm a flaming misogynist, but just like um, some of the ideology and the way that we've been theorizing gender. I'm just like, I don't think this is fully getting it. I have some doubts, but it felt like in wider society, it was really risky for me to admit that I was asking to get attacked, and that I was afraid that I was going to kind of get piled on if I ever brought this up anywhere public. And I remember in one of those Inspiral circles that I got to just share, like, hey, look, this is what's been on my mind. This is what I'm thinking about. This is the feelings that I have about it. Like, I'm really charged up with this. And to be sitting in a room of people that I know a bunch of them are going to have concerns or doubts about they'll be like, wow, he really thinks that. Wow, I didn't think that. But that there's some that their questions or their challenges or anything, they're sitting on top of a baseline of acceptance, that we have a degree of trust in each other, that I'm not concerned about losing my belonging because I'm expressing a belief that might be controversial. Or it doesn't have to be controversy. Sometimes it's shame. It's like, oh, I don't want people to know that I have these thoughts about my relationship, or like, I'll see someone that's like a young parent talking about how parenting's not all that great, and it's supposed to be the time of my life, and actually it kind of sucks, or whatever is the thing, that you feel like you're not supposed to say.
Yeah.
And to get that off your chest and be welcomed and embraced by a community of people that says, like, it's okay. It's okay that you have those thoughts sometimes. It's okay to have those feelings sometimes. I've got my own version of that. Yeah, that feeling of constantly being accepted as I am. The paradox bit is it seems to change me. It seems to, like, acceptance seems to be the precursor for certain kinds of change.
So when you say it seems to, there is not even an intention there, is there? Because because that's actually the paradox that you brought up. I'm accepted as I am, and it changes me. It's also what I use in when I explain feedback, or when I do feedback workshops. And like, there's when you do good feedback is signaling, I accept you as a person, as you are, and here's things you can do better. And that seems to me be the most effective way of actually signaling to someone that I would appreciate if you did something differently. But what you're describing now is not even doing that. It's just doing the first part, and then the change happens by itself. How so? What is then the driving force of that?
Yeah. So again, we're well outside of my expertise, but the way I think about this,
Let's speculate.
yes, I actually, speculation is the birthplace of knowledge. People don't want you to believe that, but it's true. So my speculation is a lot of stuck beliefs, a lot of emotional charge, a lot of sort of like the behaviors that you have that you're not really proud of, that you feel stuck with, like procrastination, or I don't know, how you deal with anger or something like that you'd like to change but you can't change. That many of these dynamics are maintained by like a polarization between different parts of yourself, different tendencies, different values, competing commitments that are like pulling on each other in a way where when one pulls, the other one pulls back, and the more energy you put into the system, the more stuck it gets. And and that internal polarization, it kind of it's like a knot that just keeps getting tighter and tighter. And I can tell myself, oh, you shouldn't be procrastinating, or you shouldn't be drinking so much wine after work, or whatever is the thing. And that part of me that is authoritarian and disciplinarian just activates the other part of me that wants to rebel. And if instead I can take a different posture, the way that I'm relating to myself, if I can shift that posture to something that's much more either neutral or positive, and both versions are interesting. Like the neutral one is, I'm a scientist and my job is to understand the inner landscape, and I'm just going to take notes. Oh, it seems like there's an authoritarian that has this tone of voice and reminds me of this guy, and it's connected to these beliefs. This just kind of sheer scientific curiosity. Or you can do the positive one, which adds a bit more compassion, adds a bit more understanding, a bit more tenderness, a bit more this is connected to a painful memory, and that must be really hard for you, and like getting more of that internal tone. It's like addressing your inner kindergartner, being sweet with it. That by shifting your internal awareness, shifting how you're relating to yourself, the picture I have in my mind is it just opens up space. It just says, we don't have to be this like entirely constricted, deadlocked, polarized thing. We can actually have a bit more possibility, optionality, different dimensions of movement. And I don't have to steer that movement. I don't have to say, you've got to stop procrastinating. But by investigating that procrastination behavior with compassion and patience, and kind of expanding the awareness around it, just room for different options starts to happen. And I think like when you remove the obstacles, life just naturally kind of grows in its different tendrils and expands in different ways.
I like the metaphor with the knot most because it's very visual for me. Like you've got these two or even more ropes that are tied together, and the more you pull, the more stuck they get. And I guess the community helps you loosen the grip enough so you can loosen the knot and at least start exploring different options and maybe even untie it, and then you're free to go other places. So that's kind of how it just played out in my head cinema.
My wife Nati always uses this phrase. I don't know where she got it, but she talks about like that we have these two fundamental drives. One is to be accepted, and one is to grow.
Yeah.
And those things are in tension. And when you can get, sometimes what you need is someone else to give you that feeling of acceptance, and then that activates the growth. And it's hard to kind of do it all for yourself. Like you need to be borrowing other people's. You sort of take turns playing different roles.
Yeah. Just great. I really don't like this interdependence stuff. I would just rather all do it by myself.
Yeah.
I guess that's why I'm interviewing you and not the other way around.
Yeah.
All right, let's see where else we should be going. Okay. So what are some common patterns about community that actually get in the way?
One of the things I've struggled with in my own community building, that is a common pattern for lots of people, is a fantasy of inclusion, which is, whether it was my family or school or some experiences I had at university and work, I had this awful experience of being ostracized or kicked out or being left behind, and that leaves an emotional sting. And so then when it's my turn to create a community, no one's going to be left behind. Everyone's going to be included. We're going to finally create that space of limitless utopian inclusion. Unfortunately, at a certain point, you include people whose behavior excludes others. And I can say that in a short phrase, like, here's the lesson, but that's the lesson from really, really, really painful experiences of doing everything in my power to include someone and feeling like I'm violating a sacred value of mine when I realize we have to exclude them.
Mm.
But it's just this, that's just the basic truth of it, is that you include some people whose behavior excludes others. So therefore, if total inclusion is not possible, my job is to design what are the intelligent constraints, like what are the behaviors we want to include and exclude? Where do we want to put the line? Because the line's going to be somewhere. And do we want to include, do we want to decide like, oh, we'll just have the most inconsiderate, self-confident, rowdy people? Because that's who you're going to get if you aim for total inclusion. You know, the ones that feel most confident to just push themselves in. Or do we want to be more thoughtful about what behaviors and traits and skills and attributes that we want to include?
Yeah.
And that's I think a super common thing that it's almost like, for me, it's like part of my own process of maturing is to realize like, all those groups that I saw in the past that had some kind of exclusion dynamic, that's unavoidable. And if I'm going to do anything with relationships, it's going to include kicking people out.
Mm. Can you share a story about when you actually went through with excluding someone and how that came about?
So we, a group of friends of mine, when we first encountered Inspiral, we had this startup idea. We're like, we're going to make a software platform called Lumio. It's a collective decision-making software. And we started with 6 people, 6 co-founders, which is already like kind of a unusual arrangement, but it's just 6 people who are really enjoying each other's company, collaborating well. And we said, hey, are we committed? Yeah, we're committed. So we went for it. And eventually we had to fire one of the 6 co-founders. And that given our, anti-authoritarian communalist values, kicking someone out to me was like such an outrage. And it took me a long time to really be persuaded that that was the right move, because with a startup, with any kind of project that's mission driven, that's like, hey, we have an external objective in the world. We're trying to produce this piece of software for this purpose. We're trying to have this impact. You have to be able to take a rational analysis and say, is this person contributing to the impact, or are they getting in the way? And okay, this co-founder of mine was not doing a great job. Well, then let's not be brutal and harsh and just say, you're no good at this. We're going to deploy as much support and encouragement as we can. And then again, at one point or another, it's like, hey, we keep trying lots of different things to give you support so you can be a better contributor here. But everything we try is having no result, and it's just costing us more. Like, eventually it was just unavoidable. Like, I was a very slow learner, but eventually we got around to like, this ain't working. And I sort of like, in my defense, I guess, defending against my younger self, in my defense, when we finally got to the end and asked him to leave, our relationship is still pretty good. We're still friends, like we managed to do it with sufficient integrity and openness and like straightforwardness with each other, like adult to adult. Here's the situation. Let's think about it together. Here's the natural conclusion. So I think it's possible to do exclusion in a humane way that's not just brutal and, kind of kicking someone out of the tribe and having no consideration for their feelings. But it does seem to be necessary when if you have an objective that's anything more than just we want to hang out and be friends, there has to be some kind of mechanism for exiting people.
Mm. But even so, I guess if you don't have that external mission, there could still be behavior that might qualify someone for exclusion, right?
Yeah, the mission could be, we just want to have a especially trusting and safe environment here, so that the kind of hanging out we're doing is really nourishing. And if someone's not contributing to that sense of safety, then that might be enough.
Yeah. Let's take a small detour to that company setting. Because it's, as you said, it's a different context. And I'm wondering how much can a company itself be a community, or if it's bigger, how much can communities be part of a company?
Mm. Something that I really valued about Inspiral, the way that it was in New Zealand, and sort of 10 years ago, basically, like 2015, was you have a community where there's a lot of friendships, a lot of shared activities, some people in shared housing, or some people dating, or some people playing music together, lots of just overlapping, a very dense social fabric. And then within that community, many clusters of business activity. So people starting new ventures, or taking on contracts together if they're freelancers, things like that. And that pattern felt super generative and really
Mm.
wholesome to me. That each of these small business ventures um, lives inside a wider membrane. That when one of them suddenly gets funding, they can employ a bunch of people from the community and pull them in, and those people come with pre-existing relationships and trust and shared culture and shared outlook on the world. And then when one of them loses the funding, or they decide that this is not going to work and they shut down the startup, all of those people don't just disperse into the wider universe. They stay within the membrane, and so many of the resources, the learning, the skills, they get to stay within this organism is kind of gaining, even when individual components are cycling out and failing. Um, and like when we had a conflict in our business, we knew there were always these like friendly peers just outside the door that have enough shared context to be useful to us, but they're not so heavily invested that they're biased in our conflict, and they can come and
Mm.
just play a informal kind of mediation role. It's hugely beneficial for a innovation and entrepreneurship community.
Yeah. Funny that I asked the question exactly the other way around, but then what your answer was then. It's like companies are part of a community, not the other way around.
Yeah, well, and this is kind of my outlook on the world in general, is
Yeah.
that like I think um I think what a good society looks like is you have this the wider loop is about common values, shared identity, this like imagined community. And then within that, you have the marketplace, and you have these market-based transactions
Mm.
going on. But that when things get weird, you can always fall back on like, yeah, but we're all part of the same family, and we care about each other, and we've got shared values that are bigger than what happens in the marketplace.
Mm. Have you seen that any place else than in Spiral? Does that exist? I mean, like there's one community or group. I don't know if they're an actual community uh, that I know of is entrepreneurs organization, but there's always only the founders who are part of it. So
Mm.
it's and what you described was more like no, you know, most if not all of these people were part of the community, and so there's a lot closer bonding and more opportunity for mutual support. Whereas with in entrepreneurs organization, it just seems more like this elite group that
Right.
gets to be part of it, and the rest of the company's employed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a group in New York called Fractal, which I really
Mm.
have a lot of respect for. And the way that started was just one family living in an apartment, and then the apartment across the hall came up, and so they just grabbed it and they said, "We'll find our friends to take that lease." And very rapidly they repeated this process until they were just living around loads of their friends. And each apartment has still its own independent autonomous lease. There's no like central coordination body, but it's just a bunch of friends deciding to live nearby. And then once they had that um, proximity to each other, then they started a lot of projects. So they started a kind of community college, university thing, and also now there's a co-working space and a whole bunch of tech startups that are emerging out of it, and small companies are happening. And it's sitting on top. The baseline is friendship. Like
Mm.
that's the foundational thing. It's not a commercial venture, but commercial ventures are kind of fruiting inside of that garden.
Cool. Um, oh, here's a question I'm interested in the answer in. How has your perspective on community changed in the past 10 years?
I think the most obvious thing that's changed for me in the last 10 years with my attitude towards community and groups in general is my attitude towards hierarchy. So when I got involved in all of this work, I was coming from an essentially anarchist perspective that um, hierarchy is fundamentally coercive and it's just like a dumb, unnecessary, outdated structure that we use for controlling people. I still think that is often what hierarchy looks like, but it's not the whole story. Um, and in the last few years, I've become much more aware and understanding of how part of our inheritance as mammals is that we have at a subconscious level, we are cued by hierarchy. There's a part of us that's constantly tracking the pecking order and understands who are the high status members in this tribe, and whoever has got that higher rank has some kind of outsized influence on the dynamics that are happening in the group. And that doesn't mean you should identify the high ranked person and give them a special hat and say, you're the boss and you tell us what to do. But it means that if you are of a higher rank than the average, you've got extra responsibility and your words are going to carry extra. So, like in this community that we're cultivating here, I'm one of the founders. And so, just by definition, I have higher rank than someone who just showed up for a week. And I've noticed how much the state of my nervous system influences the state of the nervous system of people showing up. That because me and the other people who live here are calm and regulated and open and spacious, when guests show up, it's amazing how quickly you watch the stress drop off their shoulders and they're like, oh, I just feel really calm. I just feel really at home here. I feel really at peace. And it's partly because we're in an amazing natural landscape, but it's also because the people that are greeting them are, their nervous systems are deeply regulated. That has a huge impact on people. Or similarly, there's been times where we've been in a dialogue with a group of people and say one person has an angry outburst and they really let out some emotion, which is usually kept contained. And you can watch as people kind of take a second to check, should I be freaking out right now? Is this allowed? You know, this is, oh, it's really spicy. And sometimes they'll look to me. They were like, hey, you're one of the leaders in this space. Are you freaking out? Oh no, Rich seems fine. Rich seems settled. And you can watch as the sort of emotional disturbance has an instant where people are on edge and then they realize that I'm calm and they're like, oh, maybe everything's fine. Everything's fine. And so I've just got a lot more respect for how the unavoidable hierarchical dynamics that some people are going to have outsized influence and that you can use that influence skillfully to contribute to a kind of harmony, or that you can be a role model that's demonstrating certain behaviors that you want to see more of. Or you know, that as a leader, I can make interventions that a lot of other people can't. Like if there's something going on where it's like, that behavior is not really reflective of our values, like I can intervene in that situation with a lot more efficiency and effectiveness than someone with less power than me. So I've become more comfortable with that in a way where 10 years ago, I would have just thought like, that's just power tripping, arrogant, coercive, you know, you're just trying to be an authoritarian.
Yeah. All right. Not sure yet how to get this across most effectively for you to sense into it. But what I'm thinking of right now is, let's say I'm Rich 10 years ago, and we're on this call, and I have all the beliefs that you had then 10 years ago. I'm like, nah, dude, you just sold out. You just built enough social influence and power that you're now sitting on top of a hierarchy, and now you like it. Down here, it's still shit. Convince me that I should see it otherwise.
Yeah, this happens all the time on Twitter. That guy shows up in my Twitter comments all the time. And I basically don't try yeah, I don't try to, there's certain lessons I think you can only learn in your own pace. And I don't really try and persuade people. I would just say, do me a favor and put a reminder in your calendar for 10 years off today and let me know how it went, because Uh, like I actually want to encourage you in your idealism and your sense of what's possible, and I want you to give it your best shot, but then also be honest about the constraints that you're facing,
Yeah.
um, and also the other claim that I would make is I think if you spend time around the groups that I'm leading, you'll notice they have a higher than average level of harmony and effectiveness and collaboration. And come and, the proof's in the pudding. Test it out, see if you agree, see if there's something creepy going on, or actually if we've learned something about the social physics of belonging and collaboration.
I mean, I get your point, right? And that's why I I didn't want to just voice the critique or be that guy on Twitter who points this out with no context or no relationship to you. But that's why I find this scenario of if you could send a video back to yourself 10 years ago and with that compassion and care, and you actually care about this person growing to a place that you find more useful now, what would you say to them? Or
Mm.
would you not what would you say to them? What would you say to yourself?
Honestly, what I would say to myself is like, "You're awesome. Keep going. Don't listen to me. Like, you know what's right." Because there's certain kinds of developmental transitions, I think, where that as you cross that threshold, you're no longer able to have anything useful to say to the version before. That there's a kind of like
Mm.
mutual repulsion that happens there, and trying to persuade them of something is counterproductive.
Uh, hey, but that's the thing. I totally agree, and I hate persuasion. But I thought maybe there is a nudge or a hint
Yeah.
that would make it
Well, yeah.
easier.
I don't. Yeah. I guess I'm enamored with the natural flow of things, and like I don't know
Uh,
if you can skip a step.
well, I mean, if you don't want to, then just use the
Well,
message for something else. Just buy Bitcoin, something like that.
yeah, buy Bitcoin. Just buy a fraction of one Bitcoin. I know. I do work with people that are not the same as me of 10 years ago, but um, a lot of my work as a trainer or a coach is working with people who are in a similar life track than me, but a little bit behind. And I would just put my attention on where are they stuck? Where's the cognitive dissonance? Where is the like dilemma that seems to be costing them a huge amount of energy? And I would look for just really constructive ways to help them with that. And I would expect that piece by piece, when you notice like three stuck things in your life in a row, they get unstuck, and the move looked like, oh, you've got to take your power, you've got to exercise authority with integrity, like you've got to be holding up the standards that no one else is holding. You start to. I don't think you start from this top-down view of like, oh, you should embrace hierarchy. I think you start from the bottom up of like, okay, what's your objective? What's getting in the way? What's the most obvious solution? Let's try that. And you accumulate evidence over time of okay, what's the deeper sort of mindset block, or what's your mental model that's getting in the way of you seeing the obvious right answer.
Mm. All right. Bringing us back to community uh, from hierarchy. So the next question would be, what's the edge you're exploring in your own community practice right now?
I hate this question. uh, I hate admitting that I have edges and that I'm not fully developed and fully mature and complete, but realizing that I'm still learning, and in many ways I'm a complete baby. Like it's nauseating to think that. Um, and actually, my edge at the moment is about asking for help.
Mm.
Um, that I'm on this constant process of expanding my ambitions and like what I want to contribute, what I want to learn, who I want to grow into. And at a certain point, your ambition reaches a stage where I can't do it on my own. Like it requires the participation of many people. And I've just been confronted again and again lately of like, wow, this is only going to work with the support of a lot of people. And the bottleneck here is my unwillingness to ask for help. And I feel like I'm making some headway on it. I asked for help 4 times yesterday, and on some big stuff, big stuff. Like really, I've got this vulnerable advice that I need, or Yeah. Um, and the shift that's been happening is a reframing of this verb asking for help from something that I thought of as a sign of weakness or insufficiency, or like, I wish I was more competent, but now I have to admit that I'm not, and you need to come and patch up what I lack, to something that's a lot more, it's more like I'm defining ways that you can participate in something that's meaningful to both of us. And that's what it means to ask for help. It's saying, hey, I think you and I share this objective in the world, and I'm taking care of this part of it. And I'm wondering if you'd want to take care of this other part of it. And we can have kind of like an interface that we've defined between us.
Mm.
And that feels a lot less nauseating.
So I'm trying to sense into that myself because might have an issue around asking for help myself. Uh, I guess what what resonates with me is this asking someone for something they don't want to do, but then they feel obligated to do it, and that kind of leaves this tinge on the relationship. And I'm trying to avoid that. And if we dig even deeper, I guess that's probably projection. If someone asks me to do something, I feel awkward saying no, so I'll do it reluctantly, and then there's resentment, blah blah blah. Um, yeah, now that I sensed into that, I forgot what the follow-up question for that was. uh, but does that make, is that what it was for you, or is because here's what I want to say, that that part of reframing it to here's something meaningful to both of us, and here's how you can contribute. So I'm helping you do something you would want to do anyway, and that is me asking for help. Is that what it is? Is that the reframe? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. It's like knowing something about what that person wants and
Mm.
showing them like, yeah, I've got the other puzzle piece.
Okay, so that is, I could see that in both ways. So one, you know a specific person well enough, so you know they would want to contribute that way, or you broadcast and you like kind of like let those people find you. Is there, is that how you're
Yes,
doing it, or is there another
the
way?
the broadcast is really, really good because I've put a lot of energy into social media, and so like I've got a big network there, and so I can say, "Hi everyone, I want to raise a $50,000 loan so that I can start this new community venture, and I can get that loan covered in 3 hours from a bunch of different people showing up and saying, yep, I know you, I trust you, I want that." This is what happened in January. Um, and so then I don't have the awkwardness of going to an individual and saying,
Mm.
would you possibly mind? I don't have the stress of feeling like, oh, am I obligating them? Are they going to give this out of a sense of pressure, not out of joy? But I still have the other resistance to doing that, which is, what if I ask and I broadcast where everyone can see,
And no one shows
and
up.
then no one shows up? It's like pretty humiliating.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm exaggerating that. Maybe people say like, "Oh, that's so cool. He's got a great vision and he's got a lot of confidence to ask." And even if it doesn't come true, like if it doesn't come true, they probably don't notice. Probably doesn't
I
factor that
know,
high,
I
but
get,
it
I get
feels
it.
really scary.
Because I mean, it's kind of like you throw a birthday party, no one shows up, but the two people who do show up, they're gonna feel really awkward. It's like, oh, you invited 30 people and we're the only two came. Probably gonna find an excuse why we need to leave now. Um, it would be the same here. I want to raise 50K, and two people show up with 1,000 each, and it's like, okay, so is this going anywhere? It's gonna be an awkward moment.
Yeah,
So makes sense.
yeah, yeah. It's cringe.
Okay. All right. So asking for help. Uh, Next question is, what is your current project concerning community weaving? Since we just touched on this is what happened in January. Um, so, I mean, I'll let you explain it. I had the joy of spending a week there in April, but I'll let you tell the story.
My current project, the thing that is on my mind literally 24/7, that I'm completely immersed in and all of my energy is going towards, is called Casa Tilo. And it's a 10-bedroom villa, an hour outside of Barcelona, in quite an extraordinary national park, like abundant wildlife, and it's extremely green and peaceful, which means a lot to me. And this villa we're using as a combination guest house and retreat center. It's a place for some people are just coming to rest and meet some other inspiring people. Some people are coming for more retreats and workshops and more events that are pushing them outside of their comfort zone and getting them to stretch a little bit and to grow. I see it as primarily it's a developmental context. The idea of the place is that you come, you spend maybe it's a week or 2 weeks, and you leave somehow bigger, better, more grown up, more mature, more refreshed than you arrived. And besides that, it's a developmental context. We don't really have an agenda. Like we're not fanatical about yoga or a particular dialogical practice or you got to be vegan or something. It's really like you're going to be surrounded by people that have different personal practices, different values, different orientation to the world. Um, but that everyone here seems to be on to some kind of quest of self-improvement and some kind of quest of altruism, like wanting to contribute something meaningful to the world. And so, yeah, the way that we rub off on each other while we're in the space, there's a piece that people get about like, we're doing the minimum amount of facilitation in this group to just make the group feel effortless but very harmonious. Just the basics of like how do meals work and cleaning and that sort of thing. But then also facilitating people to have meaningful exchanges with each other. Like sometimes we'll do in the afternoon peer support practice. Like, hey, what's a challenge you're facing? And we can just like coach each other on these challenges. Or sometimes it'll be after dinner and someone will run a dancing workshop. You're going to learn something about partner dance. And there's all these different opportunities, different activities that are happening that give you loads of different inspiring examples of these are ways that you can grow. These are ways that you can expand yourself.
Mm. Um, when you explained how people change, uh, made me remember because I've been toying around with a similar idea that's not materializing yet. Um, the what I always had in my head, the phrasing was people leave more whole than they arrived.
Mm.
That always felt right to me.
Mm.
And I think that from all I've seen and heard from Casatilo, that might also be what it is, even if you don't phrase it that way. The question around community that I have is what, maybe it's not a goal, but maybe an intention or a hope of how does Casatilo and everything you do there create or do, or what makes it happen around community?
A lot of what's happening here is people who have some level of familiarity with each other online. Like we've sort of seen each other at a distance. I've read your Substack or your Twitter or something. They suddenly realize they're living in the same house for a week. It's like, oh, that's you. It triggers this, it catalyzes this shift of like, oh, all those digital interactions, those were real. Those were not virtual. Those were real people on the other side. And we actually have shared history and shared language and meeting each other in the flesh for the first time really turns out well, we've got all this pre-existing history and kind of accelerates our ability to collaborate. That's one of the things that's happening. I think another thing that's happening is people who feel like me and Nati, my wife, who's co-founder here, we have traveled a lot over the years and we've accumulated a global network of really extraordinary people. And a lot of people, if they have been focused on their family or focused on their career or like a little bit more convergent in what they're paying attention to, it's really common for us to meet people who are not depressed, but also not optimistic about the world. That are like just basically pessimistic and feel like I don't really I don't really like the way it looks like the future is going, but also I don't feel like I've got much part to play in it, or I'm kind of nobody in the grand scheme of things, or something like that. And when you spend time here and you realize like, wow, all of these people are positive, ambitious, driven, talented, and they're all in their own ways agitating for like a more wholesome future. Like it's just really wholesome. Like it's really encouraging. It really like kind of tops up some kind of optimism barometer somewhere in your belly. It's like, maybe we're going to be okay. Maybe the world is actually in good hands, and there are a lot of really good people. That we have this kind of dispersed tribe, quite a pluralistic tribe with all sorts of different focal points. But there's a lot of us that are we're engaging earnestly with the world and trying to contribute something meaningful. And I find hugely encouraging and just leaves people kind of charged up with more optimism than they arrived.
So as part of the idea and ideal outcome that people who meet at Casatilo, they'll do something together afterwards. Ideally.
Yeah, ideally there's a lot of startups, marriages, kids, maybe a religion. Some bands would be good. Like just new collaborations forming because people found the others. Like, oh wow, we had someone here last week, and when they left, they said, there's a couple. They're reasonably well off, very well traveled, and they said, we've been traveling for years with this feeling. There's a certain kind of community that's possible. There's a way of living that must be possible, and we've never found it until here, where we got to like just spend time around people where the collaboration seemed effortless, and there just seemed to be enough emotional capacity for people, and that we're not getting they were not purely sucked into the motions, but there's also like productivity happening. Like people are helping each other on practical projects. That like they were so delighted and relieved to find like it's actually possible. They're actually it is possible to do things together, not just as your little nuclear family, but like extending your field of concern and your field of care to include more people can actually be a way of life that works.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I'm looking forward to being back in October for our next Inspiral retreat. Before then, my current side project is hosting Ale in Munich, as you know. So, in tying all of this together, what we just talked about, and knowing me and the bits and pieces you know about Ale, what could I do to increase the sense of community in the group that shows up every year for Ale?
Yeah, I think you can. It's okay to be a little bit cringe. Like it's okay to have a little bit of contrivance, or like to almost like artificially create some structure that kind of forces people out of their habitual modes of interacting and just invites them into a different way of participating with each other. So, for example, assigning everyone to you're going to meet 5 strangers and have dinner together on the first night, or something, those kind of things that the introverts hate. Some kind of social architecture that really gets people to meet in small groups and not just gravitate towards like, oh, where's the big center of attention? I'm going to go there and be a passive part of an audience. I think that helps a lot. And then the other thing that came to mind, knowing you personally, is like you and probably everyone who's organizing, taking their turn to be like, I'm going to be the host this year. There's so much passion and effort and risk and responsibility that you're taking to do that. I wonder how obvious it is to someone who's new. Why would Manuel be doing that? Like, it's not
Mm.
for some kind of extrinsic financial gain or something like that. It's like, I think you would only be doing that if this community has meant something profound to you. So I'd be looking for ways to kind of transmit that, especially to the new people. What is it that's so compelling about this place? So maybe some kind of like storytelling, or yeah, pairing up some of the new people with some of the old people and really inviting in that exchange of like downloading. This is why we really care about it, or these are stories of ale at its best, or like what kind of impact it's had on people. Because it's probably not that obvious. It's obvious to you because you're
Mm.
organizing, but someone coming in from the outside, they might just be like, "Oh, is this kind of like a tech conference? Oh yeah, okay, I'll get some knowledge and then I'll go."
Yeah. 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 There's definitely always a big span of uh, well, familiarity. What this is. There's the first timers, and then there's there's one person who's been to every single one. I just did the read her a few weeks ago, and I learned some origin stories that I didn't know yet. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, getting those people together makes a lot of sense, and transferring that. Why does it matter to people?
Mm.
Okay, so that's all the prepared questions. Andrew, we've been talking for a while, so we probably should wrap it up fairly soon anyway. But before we do that, is there anything that we missed, or anything that you think of now as like, no, this is essential around community? If we don't have this in, all this other thing is useless. This is the one thing we need to stress.
Mm-hmm. So it's my belief, my orientation in the world, my understanding that um, all of the challenges that we face as a civilization are solved by better coordination, better collaboration, namely more community. That's like more shared identity, more investment in each other, more care for each other, and that we need an enormous number of people to be taking responsibility for weaving the social fabric, for constructing shared identities. And if you think about running a conference like AL and you think, gosh, that's really intimidating, I couldn't possibly do that. Could you run a workshop? Could you host a dinner table? Could you just do a little introduction round at the start of a meal? Like, what's the level of confidence that you have for weaving people together? And in my view, there's like a pretty linear progression from each of those steps to then be running a conference, to then running a network of conferences, to then be participating in this more civilizational level, building coordination and shared identity at scale.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm looking for who are my companions in this mission. I really want to be surrounded by people that are actively stitching people together at whatever scale works for them. And yeah, I feel like when we have critical mass of people doing this, taking this hospitality game seriously, then this is the dawn of a new golden age.
Mm.
Just as the sunshine comes out.
Yeah, hallelujah. Yeah, I think that's actually my main takeaway from this conversation. I probably heard you say it before and it didn't land, but this stress on hospitality, that is the key factor, and it does make so much sense to me. And now that you listed this progression, I feel like I accidentally skipped ahead to organizing a conference without ever having hosted a dinner with two people who didn't know each other yet. So maybe I should take care of that first. It's my mission for the next couple of weeks.
That's great.
Cool. Then we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Rich, for taking the time and sharing your knowledge around community, speculating some,
Yeah.
which is exactly what I was hoping for, to also go to the places where we're not sure yet. And actually, as we said, speculating and laughing about it, for me, it's actually not so much about speculating, because speculating, I always feel like speculating theory and about others. but tapping into what's real for me and what did it feel like. And I think even though that's not scalable and it might be an individual experience, it's still useful to do that. And as you said, I think that's how you advance, right? Because you don't have all the data yet, so you need to start somewhere. So thanks for starting somewhere with me here.
It's a great pleasure. It's a lot of fun for me too.